Good afternoon. Welcome to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. Today we're talking about when a confession is a lie, the evolving law of coerced confessions. Confessions can carry an enormous weight in courtrooms, in media coverage, in the public imagination. We're conditioned to believe that if someone admits guilt, the case is over, that no one would confess unless it were true. However, the truth may be stranger than fiction because people confess for various reasons. Maybe they believe that if they confess, then they can go home. No harm, no foul, right? Maybe they confess because they want notoriety or they want some sort of special favor, like being transferred to maybe a minimum security prison or something like that. And so people confess for a lot of reasons. Sometimes we don't fully understand the reasons. Sometimes they confess through coercion, or they confess because they're being manipulated in some way. And previous times, there were actually law enforcement officers who would engage in physical violence to try to get a confession, right? No one knows how widespread that was, but there was times before Miranda and all of that where that would happen. The constitutional foundation, the right against self-incrimination, sits at the core of American criminal law, as it should. No one should be forced to testify against themselves. The Fifth Amendment protects individuals from being compelled to testify against themselves. The 14th Amendment extends that protection through due process. Together, they establish a principle that sounds simple, but is anything but. A confession must be voluntary, freely given, right? Not just spoken, not just recorded, but voluntary. If you are coerced into a confession, then it shouldn't stand, right? You need to be given your rights. As you all may know, they're called the Miranda rights. They developed around the 60s, which is you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, but you're not required to do that. You can remain silent. You can request your attorney. You can do all sorts of things like that. And that would essentially protect you from giving a confession that you are not compelled to give. So what voluntary actually means is courts don't ask whether a confession was polite or procedurally neat. They ask whether the suspect's will was overborne. And there's multiple ways to overburden or overborne a person's will. And that could be through coercion, that could be through manipulation, that could be through violence, that could be threatening their family. I mean, all sorts of shady tactics that, potentially could overborne their will. And you think about juveniles. Juveniles have a right to have their parents present, and to not have their parents present or not to allow them to make phone calls, to do all sorts of things that essentially are not on the up and up, right? Because obviously as a juvenile, they're not an adult yet. And so they do need the ability to have their parent present, as that makes sense. Judges examine the totality of the circumstances, including the length of the interrogation. So for instance, say that someone came in at 7 a.m. and at midnight, juvenile, still being interrogated. Their parents don't know where they are. They don't have the parents there. They haven't been read their rights. I mean, that's a lot of issues with that particular confession. And ultimately, it could potentially be thrown out by the fruit of the poisonous tree, which means they're not doing what they need to be doing. And they are literally trying to overburden this juvenile's resolve, right? 7 a.m. to like midnight. I mean, that's pretty substantial if you think about it. The isolation. Maybe they are forced to sit in the interrogation room by themselves for 2 to 3 hours. And maybe they're like, I just want to get out of here. I want to get home. I want to go where I need to go, right? I want to call my parents. I want to make sure that I'm safe. I'm sick of this. I'm tired of this. I've been here a long time. I need to go home. Sleep deprivation is another thing, because you think about if you prevent someone from actually getting rest, then you are essentially kind of fogging up their thinking. It is a form of torture. If you think about a lot of people who've been in war situations, I mean, one of the ways that they make people essentially have like a frantic, crazy moment is by depriving their sleep. And then implied promises or threats. Hey, you confess to this, like you're going to go home and everything's going to be fine. You may not even be charged. I don't know. Or threats, like this could get a lot worse for you real fast. So you need to just do what you need to do, confess to this, and be done. That's also looked into. And that's why now it's so important, like with the whole body cam thing going on, which is great. There's actually ways to kind of document stuff, as well as tape recordings are really important. One of the things that I've seen just in, just being a true crime viewer myself, is the fact that I've seen a lot of instances where, tapes, have an issue, or, certain things aren't recorded, or certain things are written incorrectly. And then you have that issue where ultimately, as a law enforcement officer, I think that they need to be very conscientious and protect not only themselves, but the work that they're trying to do. Because I think at times there is some lack of trust with law enforcement officers, not blaming anybody, but just saying a lot of people are kind of distrustful, especially kind of with what we're experiencing in certain areas. And then also they look at the age, the education, and the cognitive ability of the suspect to understand like the consequences, like I mentioned, Brendan Dassey. The question is not whether police followed a script, it's whether the person had a real ability to say no, or did the officer continue to pressure them, do things that were kind of shady or not really protocol, just to try to get them to confess. So let's talk about psychological interrogation techniques. Modern interrogation methods rely heavily on psychology rather than physical force, which used to happen. Techniques may include presenting false evidence, which this is 100% legal. They are able to tell you, well, you know what? I called your mom when you went on break, and your mom, when you went to the bathroom, and your mom actually said that you confessed to her. So we need to talk about that. They are able to do that. Because if that suspect or defendant believes that the mother actually said that and starts talking, that's admissible. Minimizing the seriousness of the act. I think I know what happened. So you were driving and you just accidentally bumped someone. Like that's really not that big of a deal. Literally, like that wouldn't be much time. Like that might be negligence. That might be something, maybe even a civil case. Who am I to know? Or you literally put that guy in the hospital. But you know what? I totally understand, because it was self-defense, wasn't it? It wasn't your fault. You didn't mean to do that. You didn't mean to harm. It had to have been. It was self-defense. I bet you could get off on self-defense. Yeah, you should try that. And then also the other kind of life raft they'll throw you is that cooperation with the police will bring the relief that you want. Most of these methods are often legal. But again, it turns on the facts. And that's the thing with the legal community as a whole. Facts make a huge difference. But legality does not equal safety. So false confessions occur disproportionately among juveniles, among those who are cognitively vulnerable individuals, people under extreme stress, where they know that there's a lot riding on what they're doing, and they feel the stress. It's almost palpable. Those seeking escape rather than truth. A confession can feel like the only way out, even when it isn't true. Why the law has struggled to respond. For decades, courts treated confessions as nearly definitive. After all, people don't admit crimes they didn't commit until evidence showed that sometimes they do. DNA exonerations force the system to confront an uncomfortable reality. Confessions can be detailed, emotional, and false. The law has begun to shift, slowly, toward recognizing that reliability and voluntariness are not the same thing. The modern legal tension. Today, courts walk a narrow line, respecting law enforcement tools while guarding against psychological coercion. Some jurisdictions require recording interrogations, others scrutinize certain techniques more closely. But the core tension remains. Confessions feel like closure. The law exists to protect against closure that arrives too easily. In closing, a confession is not truth by default. It is evidence, powerful evidence, but evidence must be tested, contextualized, and sometimes rejected. Because certainty, when earned too cheaply, is one of the most dangerous things the law can offer. Thank you for tuning in to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in. It means a lot to me. Bye-bye.